Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
It's tax time, and all over the country, Tea Party groups are protesting what they say is a government out of control. Have these groups become a political force to be reckoned with in the upcoming elections? And what about the new coffee party? We'll stir things up next on Dialogue. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. A welcome as well to those of you tuning in on public radio and the World Wide Web. Just a year ago, some political pundits were voicing skepticism about anti-government protesters who said they were part of a new Tea Party movement. Nope, the experts said, not a movement. Too incoherent a message, no party leader, no party platform, too many fringe elements. But the groups haven't fallen by the wayside. Indeed, a recent poll indicates nearly 1 in 5 Americans identifies with the movement. And the groups say they're having a big effect on traditional party politics. They're not out of the mainstream, and they're here to stay. Today on Dialogue, we'll hear from 3 Tea Party members from different parts of the state and from a member of the new Coffee Party as well. Chapters of that group have started up all over the country to counter what they say is uncivil debate from Tea Party groups and others. So what do they hope to accomplish? We'll find out. And what do you think? Are tea and coffee parties a good addition to our democratic process or a distraction? Do you belong to one of the groups? Give us a call at 1-800-973-9800. Now let me introduce my guests. Joining us from Moscow, Idaho, in our studio on the campus of the University of Idaho, is Bruce Saunders of the Lewis and Clark Tea Party. Welcome to you.
I'm glad to be here.
In Pocatello, in our studio on the campus of Idaho State University, is Dorothy Moon of the Custer County Tea Party out of Challis. Welcome, and thanks for driving down from Challis to Pocatello. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And here with me in Boise are Brendan Smythe of Tea Party Boise and Cindy Gross of Coffee Party Boise. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we're talking about the Tea Party movement. What do you think? Give us a call at 1-800-973-9800. I kind of feel like I should start my own cafe or something. I've got the Tea Party and the Coffee Party in one room. That's pretty cool. First, I want to go around and just get a sense from all of you of a little bit more about you and why you are involved. So many people have busy lives and they don't take the time to be involved in much of anything, you know, because of their families. And so you guys have joined, and I want to know more about that. Bruce, let's start with you. Tell folks a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and why did you get involved in Tea Party?
Well, I'm a general manager for Pathologist Regional Laboratory in Lewiston, Idaho. I'm a family man. I have 6 kids and 1 wife. I got involved in this because I saw the spending by the federal government was far beyond what was sustainable over the long term. And on top of that, with the administration spending the money in inappropriate ways just got me furious. I just had to get involved.
And Dorothy, why don't we go to you in Pocatello? Tell folks a little bit about what you do and why you got involved.
Sure, Marcia. I'm a high school special ed teacher up in Challis. I have 2 sons, teenage sons. My husband has an engineering business down in Rupert. And we're seeing cut back in engineering business. Things have definitely slowed down considerably, and when you look at the government spending and the reckless spending, I believe, and the increasing deficit is just something that we couldn't sit here and watch and without getting involved. When the Tea Party to Washington, D.C. on 9/12 occurred, I went out for that event, which was tremendous. It opened my eyes that I'm not the only one who feels this way. There's a lot of people I was rubbing shoulders with that felt the same way, and it was very uplifting, and I think it really kind of has directed me and my husband into becoming community organizers and setting up this Tea Party up in Custer County.
Great, thank you. And Brendan, down here in Boise, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got involved.
Well, I'm owner of Draft Tech. It's an architectural drafting firm out of Eagle. I got involved, it started with the bailouts, basically. Handing out money to people that or businesses, corporations that should have failed. That's where we started. And since then, we're seeing, like Bruce had talked about, the spending has just gotten absolutely outrageous at the federal level. Both Republicans and Democrats alike are falling into that trap.
Great, wonderful. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk to Cindy Gross, and you're a brave soul. You've come on from the coffee party to talk with Tea Party members a little bit more in the audience about your views. Tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, and then tell us what the coffee party is all about. I mean, some people look at it and might have said, oh, cute name, but what are they really, what are they doing?
Right. So I do computer support for a large tech firm. I have enterprise customers throughout the country who call me for help. I got involved in the coffee party when it started just a couple months ago. So it's still a new movement. There's a lot to be decided yet about what direction it's going in, all of those kind of things. But I was seeing all this buzz about it on the internet, and I said, well, Boise has to be involved. We've got to get Idaho involved in it as well. And a lot of the concerns that the Tea Party and everybody else has are very valid concerns, but I think that there's a little bit of difference in how the coffee party wants to approach those issues. What we see on TV, what we see in the media is a lot of yelling and misinformation and what appears to be deliberate misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the facts a lot of the time. So the coffee party is meant to be a civil discourse, and one of the key tenets is also that we believe government does have a role in our life as Americans, and we are the government. We, the people, are the ones that run this country, and we determine where the government goes, and so we need to use that to the best of our ability.
Well, certainly some of the Tea Party folks have used the phrase we the people are the people. Mm-hmm. Do you disagree not only with the tone of what you're hearing, but actually the substance as well? Do you find that you're, say, a liberal reaction to the Tea Party?
Well, there's me personally, and then there's the coffee party. So the coffee party is very deliberately nonpartisan, and we were hoping for some Tea Party people at our meetings. We've had 2 meetings so far, and no one showed up. And it's a new movement. There's a lot going on. I know at some of the other chapters, there were 350 chapters that met for the first kickoff meeting. Some of the other chapters did have a handful of Tea Party people. So we would like to have more of that discourse. I personally tend to have a little bit more liberal viewpoint, but the coffee party is meant to bring people together and discuss contentious issues without yelling at one another, without getting all heated and into, well, you're evil because you believe this and I believe that.
Well, let's talk a little bit with the Tea Party folks about the rhetoric. There's been a lot of discussion about this, that it especially around the healthcare debate, there was some name calling of a African-American congressman and other things. Do you sense that is fringe elements of the movement? Do you distance yourself from that? Bruce, maybe you can jump in on this.
We are definitely peaceful, seeking people. There is no intention here at all from anybody that I've ever talked to in the Tea Party movement of calling people racist or anything else in that matter. We obey the law, we follow the law. We are just fed up with the federal government assuming control of all of our lives. We want a more limited government from the central government and more control of our lives in the local government.
I'm sorry. We're just seeing some signs here that are pretty heated. That came out during the healthcare debate and have pictures of President Obama on them. And so, how do you react when you see that side of the movement? Because it does appear to be there.
Well, one thing Go
sorry,
ahead.
Bruce. Go on, Bruce.
So, do you want me to? Okay.
Sure.
Sure. The media is going to pick up on some certain signs, and they're going to try and say that is how the Tea Party movement is all about. And sure, we get mad. We do get upset about certain things. But when it comes right down to it, we are going to follow the basic principles of government and obey the law. I have not met anybody in this organization that is racist or anything along those lines.
So do you think, Brendan, that the claims are unjustified? That there
Oh, absolutely. We haven't seen that one bit. And in fact, even the media is having trouble actually narrowing in on what these comments were, looking at the footage. They may find a sign here or there that might be angry at our president. But you know, what I tell people is, if you look back in history, at what point in time, you go through your history, and every great movement that we write about, that we teach our kids about, is a movement about freedom. And from Gandhi to Martin Luther King to our forefathers, to give mankind the right to choose for himself, to not have Washington or our federal government choose for us, that works for all colors.
Anyone else want to jump in here and talk about the
I'd
allegations?
like to, Marcia. I'd like to, Marcia. I think one thing that's interesting too, Andrew Breitbart put up a $100,000 award just for someone to come up with this tape where the racial slurs were being used. And I think it's been out there for 2 weeks now. So I think a lot of this is fabricated. I truly do. When I was in D.C. amongst the 2 million people, sure, there were a couple of the signs I did not like. And I said, sure enough, that's the one sign they're going to come in on, and they did. So I think they look for an incident. I think that sometimes they are fabricated, and the media grabs them and runs with them. And I think that's the unfortunate part, because like Brendan and, when we were at the meeting in Nashville, there was a couple of incidents, and sometimes I think they were set up. And I think that's unfortunate.
Cindy, did you have any thoughts?
Well, I just think that this goes to a fundamental principle of the difference between perceptions of what is and is not equality and what is and is not racism or any ism in our society. And while there may not be signs using, some of the worst words, or there may not be yelling on tape of some of the worst things, there's a lot of subtle racism that appears to me in all sorts of recordings to be very evident. So I think a lot of it is perception, and a lot of people don't like to see themselves as racist. And those of us, I'm of an age where my parents were more racist than I am, and I like to think that I'm not, but there are certain reactions we all naturally have, and the next generation will have fewer and fewer. So, there is racism. I see it in the movement.
I'm gonna go to the phone calls in just a moment. They're screened now, but I want to take we had a comment come in on our Facebook page, I believe, from Debbie, asking, why didn't they carry on like this when George Bush was president? A lot of what we're facing today is fallout from his administration. And she feels it's because Obama is president and he is African American and Democrat.
When we were sitting back around our kitchen tables, we were saying the same thing. So it was there. But it wasn't, it was just brewing at that point. When we watched President Bush, you find, as a capitalist, you find yourself, well, I'll align myself with the Republican Party. But then they let you down too. And we watched President Bush write off capitalism with these bailouts. And so that is where it started. That's exactly where it started. And then Obama just took it to a level that drove us to the streets.
So Brendan, Bruce, and Dorothy, do you all consider yourself independents or Republicans or Democrats?
Definitely.
Independent.
Independent.
I was a Republican for years, and I've recently become independent. And I have to respond to this same issue about when this started. This started for me in the Bush years. It first started I saw a complete drift with the immigration policies. They tried to shove an immigration policy to the American people. That didn't work. Then the Bush bailout of Wall Street was misguided at best. And then, like it was said earlier, Obama just took it to a much greater level, which is unsustainable over the long term.
Okay, let's take some calls. Let's go to Kelly in Boise. Kelly, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I was at today's protest in Boise, and one of the speakers went on about abortion and homosexuals, and several of them went on and on about God and Jesus. Are those speakers adding their issues onto the Tea Party platform, or is the Tea Party planning on targeting reproductive rights, gay rights, and non-Christians.
Okay, thank you very much for your call. Are you moving, Dorothy, I'll ask you, do you feel the party will eventually be moving into social issues such as abortion, homosexuality?
You know, I don't think so. And I think at a local level, when you look at Chalice, we have our values. It seems like Idaho has their unique values, which tend to be very conservative. And I think the bigger issue is the money. I think the deficit is that's going to have to be dealt with before. I don't think it's going to go to social issues. I really don't. I think we're just trying to protect our rights as it is, and we've got a pretty big battle ahead of us.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Kay in Pocatello. Kay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and you've answered many of my questions about the race system.
We lost the phone line.
And the business interests and the big money interests at the rallies and everything that I still, see. And I've just been thinking. I hear that our Governor Otter is going to attend the Tea Party in Washington, and if you would discuss that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. She mentioned that Governor Otter is going to address the Tea Party. She said Washington State, and Washington, I think she means Washington State. We've got some photographs of Governor Otter addressing the Tea Party rally in Spokane earlier today. Brendan, what do you think about the governor going out of state? Some people have wondered why he didn't stay in state to talk about this, as using the taxpayer dollar, to go out of state to address these issues.
One of the reasons he wasn't at our rally is because we didn't invite any politicians this go around. At our first rally, we had quite a few politicians, and our members didn't like that. They wanted to hear from Main Street. They wanted to hear from people like us. Workers, family.
I believe we've got shots of the rally today,
stay-at-home moms. But to go back to that last caller that talked about those other things, that didn't happen. We ran the event, and so I'd like to ask him as to what speaker is he talking about. That wasn't part of the program at all.
So where do you see your group going in terms of endorsing candidates? You didn't want any candidates at the rally today, but will you get involved in party politics?
Our group we are finding it's a little bit different than some of the other national groups. We have abstained from endorsing any candidates. We feel a little weird about the whole endorsement process. What we want to do is educate our members, educate everyone around us as to what these politicians are doing behind the scenes, the corruption that goes on, and then for our members to have the freedom to make the choice themselves, not just listen to us, not just go to the polls and say, oh, I'll vote for an R or I'll vote for a D. Know your candidates.
Let's listen to somebody from the Tea Party in Sandpoint, Pam Stout, who's gotten a lot of press. She was on David Letterman recently, and she was addressing this issue of how the Sandpoint Tea Party is getting involved in local elections.
Example, we have people running for precinct chair of local precincts in the GOP. So we're locally trying to take over the Republican Party. Actually, in Sandpoint, it's not so much of an issue. It's fairly conservative. But in other areas of the nation,
so take them over, put them out of business.
Well, not necessarily put them out of business, but change some of their ideas.
I see.
Go back to the old ideals.
So get the party back to the old ideals. We want to say to the viewers that Moscow is experiencing some audio difficulties, so I'm not ignoring Bruce. He just can't hear us, so I'm not talking to him right now. But Dorothy, do you see the folks in Custer County getting involved in the precinct level the way that Pam is talking about Sandpoint and starting to kind of take over the Republican Party?
You know, Marcia, we've got a very active group out of a town of 900 people. We have 145 members, and they are very active members, and they want to do something. I think our biggest focus in our group is to educate the membership, give them materials that they'd like to read. We are going to have forums and debates with the 2 county commissioner races in our Liberty Hall building, and we're all going to also have a debate with our state representative. We have also had District 2 Representative candidate Chick Helison come and talk. We are not endorsing any candidates. We want our membership to meet and understand their points and positions.
What about the coffee party? What's your relationship with the elections or candidates?
Well, the party's still in its infancy, and I don't think that anybody is thinking of it like a Democrat, Republican, or endorsing candidates or running candidates. Almost everybody who showed up at our first meeting, we asked, is anybody from the Tea Party? We did not ask if anybody was Democrat or Republican. But we said, who's been involved in politics before? And almost nobody raised their hand. So right now we're kind of in the phase of educating people about how the process works.
But you're meeting with candidates, are you not?
We had a coffee with Congress. That was a suggestion. So we met with some of Walt Minnick staffers, and we are planning to meet with some of Simpson's staffers
and
as well.
when you talk with these people, what are you addressing certain issues? Are you saying we believe, say, we like the health care bill, or what are you talking to them about?
So what we did at our meeting with Minnick staffers was we introduced the coffee party, and that was actually the bulk of the conversation. And we asked a lot of questions about the process and how do we communicate with you? What's the best way for us to talk to you? What are your issues? And we did express, we had split up into issue groups, and we had 2 issue groups that met with them. And we discussed our issues, but that was a small piece of it.
Okay, let's talk with Glenn in Chalice. Glenn, go ahead, please.
Yes, Marsha, thanks for taking my call. I was just wondering what the difference between the Tea Party movement and the Coffee Party movement is.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
He's wanting to know the difference.
So I think a lot of the concerns are the same, and from talking to individual people and reading a lot of stuff on the internet, listening to what's going on, the actual issues and the things that we're concerned about are very much the same. It's it's the approach.
But you were silently protesting, were you not, at the rally today?
Right, and at the rally today, there were a lot of signs that signs and comments thrown our way, and people being very rude to us. We were called un-American. We were called socialist. We were called Marxist.
Why were you standing there? Why were you protesting?
The coffee party itself, there were coffee party people there. It was not a coffee party counter protest. So some of the coffee party people there were supporting their individual issues. It wasn't for any one. We didn't all unite behind one issue.
But were you protesting the Tea Party?
It was more, we were there saying, we had signs like equality for all and healthcare is a right and things like that. So it was an attempt to show that there are things going right in our country. There are positive things going on. Everything's not falling apart around us as we stand here.
I think the difference is, that's interesting you say, and we could tie all this in together from what the Tea Party movement is doing with what Sandpoint talked about, changing the Republicans to go back. I'd like all Americans, both Democrat and Republican, to go back to some of the roots. The first Republican was Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves. Was willing to die for it. A lot of American blood was willing to die for it. When you say health care is a right, I think all of a sudden the wall does go up. Whoa, there is some differences, because sometimes the Coffee Party sounds like us, and then other things they don't. Is it a right that, health care being a right, that doctors are forced to perform labor? And so I think we will find some differences going through this.
I think there's differences in approaches and responses, but the concerns, the root concerns, and the main issues people care about, like spending and what our freedoms are, those, I hear the same things.
But it would be expressed. A more liberal manifestation of that.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I personally have a more liberal viewpoint, and those are probably the examples I tend to remember, but the Coffee Party as a whole is absolutely meant to be nonpartisan. Now, one of the tenets is that we do believe government has a role, so that does tend to make us a little more liberal, I think.
We're rapidly running out of time. We will try and get some more questions in, but if we don't get your question in, please stay on the line and we'll answer it afterwards and put that on the web. Fran wants to know, she wrote in on our Facebook page, I believe, it's easy to unify against something. We will have to see if they can unify towards something. Therein lies the challenge. Can they hold on to their constituency when they tackle social issues? Bruce, I believe you're back on the line. Can you address this issue of the Tea Party in some people's minds just being against something rather than for something?
Well, we're for basic principles of government, and that is that the Constitution was written for a limited central government. And that's what we need to more focus on. We can have differences, we can work through our differences, but the central government needs to be a limited government as outlined by the Constitution. We have found over the years that solutions are best found closer to the citizens. And so we need to think about having things done on the county level, the state level, not the central government level.
Okay,
So
that's what you're for, is what you're saying.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let us get a call in. This may be the last one. Ben in Roberts, Idaho. Go ahead, please, Ben.
Yeah, wish you would pick up those graphics on there where we can see all those tea parties. And let's count all the black, brown, Native American people that show up for these things. It's kind of like the RNC thing. Hey, there's a brown person. Hey, there's a black person. In a sea of white faces, there ought to be a lot more color.
Okay, thanks for your call. Dorothy, I'm going to go to you to answer that, and we're kind of running out of time. So why don't you address the issue of the lack of diversity in this person's mind of the Tea Party?
Well, to tell you the truth, when I was in Washington, D.C., there were a lot of African Americans in the group, not a lot of Hispanics, but there were a lot of African Americans. A lot of the speakers were actually African Americans. So I'm sure they're not all of color. Most of them are white, but to tell you the truth, there's a lot more African Americans there when you're out, in the fields. You can see them there.
Okay, we've got just about a...
Well, first off, we are in Idaho. That's one of the things we got to face the fact on. But the other thing is, it's growing. This movement is growing, and it's growing in all shapes and colors. When they know truly, they listen to what we believe in, and we do have a certain distrust for the government, and we're fighting for freedom. You will see the diversity grow and grow.
So very briefly, in about 15 seconds each, what do you think is next? Bruce, we'll start with you since we lost you for that time. What's next for your Lewis and Clark Tea Party? You've had some very large meetings.
We've had some very large meetings, very well attended over this last year. Our next meeting is July 3rd, and we expect another large crowd there.
Okay, and very briefly, Dorothy, what's next for your Tea Party?
Next for us, we've got a rally down in Burley underneath of our new billboard that says to defend your Constitution and vote corruption out. And our goal is to start putting billboards up all around the state and outlying states also before the elections.
May 1st, we have a very large candidate debate coming up here in Eagle. We have about 12 candidates, primary candidates, that will be discussing a slight debate style thing.
And for the coffee party, what's next for you?
Here in Boise on April 24th, we're going to have a meeting. We'd love to have some Tea Party people show up, see if we can practice the civil discourse when we have people in the room that are of widely varying viewpoints, because we haven't really hit a lot of issues so far.
Think you might go?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're pros at civil discourse.
Okay, well, this conversation will continue on the web. Those of you who are on the line, stay on the line, and we'll take your phone calls. And thanks to my guests for talking about this issue. We will talk about it again, I'm sure. Thanks for tuning into Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. To order a copy of this program from Idaho Public Television, call our toll-free number or visit us on the World Wide Web.